It's the big special 900th issue of Spider-Man, and with that comes an amazing new extra-length issue. One that sees all of Peter Parker's closest friends and greatest villains come out of the woodwork to celebrate this special day. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 6 and find out together, shall we? So then, as we join the book, we see long-forgotten Spider-Man character Dr. Petty raising all sorts of hell at a landfill site. He's looking for his greatest creation, the living brain robot, a longtime Spider-Man villain and sometimes ally, sometimes accessory, and sometimes just mythology gag. The people running the site are greatly unhelpful to Dr. Petty, and because of that he ends up having to get rough with them, revealing that he's not actually Dr. Petty at all, but instead some sort of strange, elevated robot life form. Not gonna lie, when I read this book early this morning, I thought to myself, oh wow, Brainiac's in this, before realizing, no Joel, wrong universe, dummy. Now, over with our hero Peter Parker, we see it's his birthday. Don't ask how old he is, it will give away the whole game. In oh-so-classic Parker luck fashion, Pete ends up ruining his own surprise party, not because he showed up too late or too early, no, because he showed up on time for once and not all the guests were there. And speaking of guests, the party is a veritable who's who of supporting Spider-Man characters from over the years. There's Nora Winters, Anne-Marie Marconi, Black Cat, Mockingbird, I think there's a couple of the Horizon Lab guys in the back. Even Flash Thompson, Agent Anti-Venom is there too. This is the first time him and Pete have been reunited that we know of since he died during the Dan Slott run, and no, they don't spend near enough time on this. There only seems to be two holdouts from the party right now. One is obviously Mary Jane Watson, because, well, that's the big mystery of the Zeb Wells run. Why did those two have a falling out? And also J. Jonah Jameson, the man who was actually throwing the party for Peter. He's late, but ends up showing up, getting chased by Dr. Octopus's arms. Normally, this would mean Pete would have to sneak away from his own party and jump into action. Luckily, he doesn't have to do it all alone, as Bobby and Felicia are there to help carry the weight for once. By the time Pete does manage to sneak away and suit up, poor Jameson is careening to the street below, moments away from becoming street pizza. Some quick thinking and some even quicker webbing later, and Spider-Man is able to make the save. Here's the thing though, it seems that the arms have anticipated this, and he was always the one they were trying to ensnare. Oh, don't get worried though, because for once it seems that the arms aren't actually here to hurt Spider-Man, quite the opposite. They're wanting his help. They even scrawl help on the wall. Peter knows this has got to be pretty serious, as the arms basically never leave Octavius, and they're still connected to his nervous system, and if he's reaching out for help, things have to be pretty damn dire. The arms also act like a cute little dog. Spider-Man pets them and they even make a little heart shape. It's kind of adorable. Now, where is Octavius right now? Well, if you've been reading the backups in this book since it began, you'll know that he was the prisoner of some strange unseen individual who we now know is the weird robot-looking guy from the beginning of the book. This robot guy, for reasons that have yet to be explained, desperately wants to know who Spider-Man truly is, and figured the best way to try and get at him is to get one of his greatest foes to lead him to him. And the tentacles ultimately end up doing just that. Spider-Man follows their trail all the way back to an old abandoned warehouse where he is overcome with an unbelievable feeling of deja vu. In fact, this issue is filled with a ton of shoutouts to even older Spider-Man and Marvel stories that chances are you probably either didn't read or have totally forgotten about by now. Ultimately, Peter ends up getting jumped by a giant hulking monstrosity. It's not an adaptoid, it's not the Sinister Six, it's the Sinister Adaptoid. Which, I gotta say, programming a super adaptoid with all the powers and skills of the original Sinister Six is actually a pretty great idea. I even like all the different little design elements on it too. This totally feels like something that's going to be an action figure sooner rather than later. Now, if trying to kill Spider-Man with an amalgamation of his greatest foes wasn't bad enough, Mean Green Machine over here decides to also kidnap all of Peter's closest friends and allies. The big question remains the same, and that is, who is Spider-Man? Obviously, people like Eddie and others have to try and dance around the topic, as they actually do know the answer to this question. Then, of course, you got people like Robbie and Aunt May who actually end up extrapolating the question, saying, you know, Spider-Man is really more of a symbol of an idea, more than just a regular old person. It's also here that the robot eventually ends up opening up about its true name and origin. Apparently, it is, get this, the living brain. No, not the lame one we know. Apparently, the original living brain project started by Dr. Petty. Apparently, this super version of the living brain grew too smart too quickly and ended up actually replacing Dr. Petty along the way. While the machine could self-determine for itself, unfortunately, it could not escape the question that plagued its creator and the other less advanced version of the living brain, and that is, of course, who is Spider-Man. That is ultimately what this whole kidnapping and gauntlet plan is about. Living brain thinks that if it can put Spider-Man through its paces, then eventually it'll get the answer to the question that it holds so dear. Spider-Man plays keep away with the Sinister Adaptoid for a little bit before once again being aided by Dr. Octopus's tentacles, who leads him deeper into the facility where we find not only where Ock is being held, but all the other members of the Sinister Six too. And before you can say impromptu team up, that's exactly what happens. Credit where credit is due. I like Zeb Wells honoring the fact that Sandman doesn't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy this week. I will say the big splash page of them all united together is pretty awesome. I guess you could call them the not-so-sinister Seven. The extra muscle certainly helps turn the tide of battle against the Sinister Adaptoid, but not for long. Again, living up to its name, it adapts to more combatants. It's actually Doc Ock who ends up saving the day this time around by coming in with a real big brain solution, one that's actually pretty damn seated in comic book lore. That is, of course, being that no supervillain team-up can ever last for too long before ultimately imploding. The Sinister Adaptoid took the Six's own powers, but also parts of their personalities, so if Doc Ock just starts a fight amongst his co-conspirators, then eventually the machine will just tear itself apart. This plan goes off without a hitch, and Spider-Man is eventually able to uncover where the real super living brain has been this whole time. The question is, what to do next? The villains naturally want their revenge for everything they've been put through and decide that the best course of action is to kill the brain. Spider-Man can't let that happen because, well, living brain has living in it, and that would be murder. That means that despite everything that he's been through, Spider-Man actually takes up and defends the super living brain, in doing so actually answering the question that it had asked from the very beginning. Who is Spider-Man? Well, he's a hero, of course, someone who defends everyone in need, even people who have done him wrong previously, which makes him a pretty good guy, right? And for once, Peter Parker's goodness is ultimately rewarded as the super living brain ends up stepping on in and protecting him from the Sinister Six, sending them back to wherever he found them. Peter says that he's going to have to unplug the brain all the same, but he's going to make sure that he's sent off somewhere where no one can hurt him ever again, and before he does, the living brain even wishes Peter a very happy birthday. Aww. And with that, the day is saved. Peter Parker may not have gotten exactly what he wanted for his birthday, but he avoided another disaster, and as the comic comes to a close, he gets a nice little birthday smooch from Black Cat. And so that was Amazing Spider-Man issue number 6, everybody, and overall I thought it was a fun little centennial issue honoring a big landmark in the series history, though not the biggest because we're still going to be celebrating 60 years soon. Hell, I consider myself pretty plugged into the comic ecosphere, and I didn't hear any promotion for this story. It's all been totally eclipsed by the big Amazing Fantasy number 1000 issue. Which is not to say they didn't work to build it up, they absolutely did. We had all those little backup stingers featuring Dr. Octopus. And yeah, it's a fun story, it has its moments. Zeb Wells does some nice deep cuts to some even older Marvel stories than I'm personally familiar with. The Sinister Adaptoid is a super cool idea and one I hope to see revisited one day. It's always fun to see the Sinister Six when they come back, no matter what form they take, but I cannot help but shake the feeling that this anniversary issue feels a lot like other anniversary issues that I've read. Hell, even though I know I'm probably in the minority, I've really been loving this Zeb Wells run for the smaller scale, back to basics, down and dirty street level take on Spider-Man that he managed to do really well in the first arc. If nothing else, this story shows that Zeb Wells certainly has a lot of range and he can do the bigger, more fantastical action blockbuster Spider-Man stories too. Overall, though, I'd probably feel comfortable giving this one a 7.5 out of 10. And I'll be more interested once we return to our originally scheduled Spider-Man programming.
Hey there everyone, Cape Joel again, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. It really helps drive engagement and helps me out too. Also, if you are a patron, which you can become for as little as $1 a month, you will get exclusive content that no one else can ever see, and you'll get to see the Comic Multiverse podcast before anyone else too. You can check out all this and more down in the description. And until next time everyone, this has been Cape Joel, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.